Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Sulaiman Ravat Show. Another busy week in South Africa. I suppose for everyone in some way or the other, it's almost always a busy week. I did say on Tuesday, that the good thing in the week after a public holiday is that the working week is a bit shorter. The bad news is that this coming weekend is not a long weekend. But yeah, there isn't too much to go before the next one, where the Friday will be a public holiday towards the latter part of September. Human beings are like that, We're always looking for the break. A lot that we could have focused on this week. Ramaphosa back in front of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, doesn't remember certain things, didn't know many things, gave explanations for certain things. Some people would accept those explanations, others wouldn't. Zuma's sick note saga that also unfolded this week. But look, in the end, every week that passes, we as Muslims need to ask ourselves, did I do a bit better this week? Have my actions improved? Has my relationship with Allah strengthened? Has my preparation for akhirah improved? Whatever little we have done this week, may Allah Ta'ala accept and forgive the deficiencies. Whatever wrongs we have done, may Allah forgive us in totality. And that's what life is all about. Every day, every week, every month, every year, you try and strive to become a better person. The month of Muharram has also commenced. Muharramul Haram, Shahrullah, the month of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the first month of the Islamic Hijri calendar. We are now into the year 1443. Hopefully a new year, new beginnings. Many people are looking for new beginnings. If you look at what has happened in recent weeks and months, and perhaps over the last 2 years since the pandemic hit the globe. I'll talk more about that a little bit more towards the end of the program, inshallah. Now, joining us on the program from the Muslim Association of South Africa, we have Yaseen Theba. We're going to be talking about a lot of what's happening on the ground, realities there, great initiatives, positive work from mostly volunteers and community activists to try and make a difference on the ground. Yaseen, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you, Maulana?
Alhamdulillah. Most importantly, how are you? The last few weeks, few months, it must be really hectic. I would assume very little sleep, a lot of stress, but also a great degree of fulfillment and satisfaction when you can do work that makes a difference to people's lives on the ground.
Maulana, I think little sleep is an understatement. We've been going at it for months and months. And I think the biggest challenge is none of us know exactly when it's going to end. It initially started in 2019, where we knew COVID is going to come to South Africa, and we anticipated a lot of things and a lot of uncertainty. And then when the first wave and the second wave took place, the needs changed all the time. With the needs of the charity drives and the support for health workers in PPE, we had the number of funerals. So, volunteers have been going at it continuously. Sleep is something that none of the guys are very familiar with recently. But alhamdulillah, guys have been sacrificing a lot. They've been sacrificing their family time, their businesses, and ultimately the satisfaction and the support in the community has been more than overwhelming. We're seeing people that COVID has changed people's lives, Maulana, and I must tell you that some of the people's comments and some of the relationships that we've built, not just with people in our own communities, but also in other communities and other areas, has been absolutely fantastic. Seeing the Muslim communities come together in different areas, supporting one another with oxygen concentrators in the past few weeks, supporting doctors, supporting areas that have been affected by COVID, has been very, very satisfying. And we hear a lot of the negative stories and a lot of the negative posts of issues and tensions and arguments and disagreements or different opinions being challenged on WhatsApp groups and social media and public posts. But there's been a lot of positive stories, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. It's always intrigued me and fascinated me in this last year or so, the spontaneous nature behind many of these wonderful initiatives that have come to the fore. Normally, when we want to start something, and it makes sense, you have many discussions and deliberations and debates and consultations, and it takes weeks, if not months, and sometimes even years before something can take off and you can get it off the ground. Now, you've kind of alluded to a few of the initiatives since last year, lockdown, level 5, hard lockdown. Everything just has to happen spontaneously, right? So you go into a hard lockdown and there's a need for hampers. You go into a wave and then there's a need to help people at home and to help people who can't breathe and to help people to get to hospitals. Then when the vaccination drive starts, then there's a need for that. Tell us about what you've learned with regards spontaneity and how spontaneously these things just happen without much planning and preparation.
Like you say, a community problem requires a community effort to resolve the problem, and a global problem needs a global effort to resolve the problem. COVID has challenged us, and we had to be on our feet. We had to be thinking, and we had to be filling the gap immediately. What we realize is that it's firstly easy to point fingers. And I think a lot of us make a mistake when we look at failures of our municipalities, failures in government, failures at our public services and our public healthcare system, specifically with related to COVID. But alhamdulillah, I think we're working with a team that has realized that it's easy to point fingers, but what are we doing? And we've made up our minds that we have to do whatever we can do to ensure that we are able to support our communities in ways that they need to be supported. And I think there's a first step to making change immediately. But shukr, I think our volunteers are always willing and committed. And once you've got a group of volunteers that are willing to fill that gap as quick as possible, I think you are able to be far more spontaneous and far more responsive to the needs in the community.
Have you been surprised? Because quite often we talk about the negatives in our community, we talk about the shortcomings, and perhaps to some extent that is justified. But if we look at how the community has come together, from last year when there was a need in terms of food security, then when it was people's health and lives in terms of the waves, then the looting and rioting. Did it get you somewhat by surprise? Was it a pleasant surprise, the extent to which people were ready to sacrifice their time and even put their own lives at risk to serve the community?
Well, the response from the community has been really overwhelming. I know that as a Muslim community, in our masjid structures, in our NPOs, and it didn't matter whether you're a small organization or you're a big organization or a national organization. I know that there was interventions that we were able to get to people in remote parts with hampers initially, and then supporting the local hospitals and doctors in the area. We were able to see to communities that needs were so vast. But alhamdulillah, no matter what, the support from small organizations, and alhamdulillah, we were able to support people.
Now, Yaseen, the Muslim Association of South Africa, MASA, how did that come into existence? Was it that same group that just started with different initiatives, and at some point you decided you needed to formalize it?
Shukr, the Muslim Association of South Africa came about where a group of us were doing a number of projects, and every time we embarked on a project, we realized that we needed to partner with someone because we just didn't have the structure to accommodate the projects, especially those projects that were happening overseas. And then also from a compliance point of view, we needed to partner with organizations that had footprint nationally and internationally. And that was the reason why we started off MASA. We got the NPO registered. And shukr, it's been a entity that we've managed to carry a number of projects, including the support for COVID patients and the vaccination drive and the MASA MedPark facility over the past few months.
Talk about that facility in terms of support for COVID patients. Now that in Gauteng especially, we seem to be, alhamdulillah, on a downward trajectory in as far as the infection rate is concerned, perhaps its importance is not as pronounced as it was, say, about a month ago. But at that time, there was a dire need, wasn't there?
I mean, like, as the needs changed, we had to adapt, and we continue to adapt. At the moment, the need is vaccinations, and that's what we mobilizing volunteers and mobilizing our community to take part in. But as the need for food and hampers came about, we realized that we need to support our community in facilitating drives that get food to people that need it the most. What that we had there were people on the streets that just didn't get blankets this year or last year because a number of NPOs were not functioning or didn't have the logistics to operate during lockdown. So as the challenges changed, we knew that we also needed to adapt and we needed to adjust and collaborate a lot more so that we can get people, we could get to people that need the assistance and the need is so where the need is so much greater.
Talk to us now about the vaccination facility at the Houghton Masjid, West Street Masjid. How did that come about? Where did the idea originate from?
Over the past few months, we've been directly communicating with officials at the Department of Health with our interventions at Med Park and the other assistance in aid where we were able to mobilize and assist them. And I think what we did is we realized that there was a need for the long lines. We saw the long lines in our area of people waiting 5 hours, 6 hours getting vaccinated. We saw old people waiting at the regional facilities, waiting in lines trying to get vaccinated. We also realized that there was a lot of people that were not familiar with the EVDS system, the online portal system to register for vaccinations. So what we did is we initially started by assisting the elderly to get registered, assisting them to get to the vaccination centers. But again, when we realized that there was a definite gap in the system and these people were not being accommodated, we sat down with the department, we sat down with officials from the Office of the Premier, and alhamdulillah, they were in agreement that we need to do something and we need to join hands and create a collaboration where we create a drive to mobilize firstly people that need to be vaccinated. So at the moment, it's over 35 years. And then carry that over into getting volunteers to assist us so that we can not just volunteer people in our local area like Houghton or our Muslim community as such, but get people mobilized so that we can assist and we can make some sort of impact in getting people vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Do you sense there's still a bit of confusion, skepticism with regards to the taking of the vaccine in our community?
There's a lot of misinformation, Molana. Definitely, I don't think. I think you've got groups, and I see on social media we call them anti-vax groups, but it's not. I don't think there's as much anti-vax as there is uncertainty. There's misinformation, and Shukran, there's been a number of drives where there is some sort of clarity now on whether the vaccine is halal or kosher or the ingredients of the actual vaccine. I think a lot of the hesitancy is coming from people that have got underlying health conditions, and they don't know what sort of effect the vaccine is going to have on them. I think that's where most of our hesitancy is coming. Shukr, I've been consulting with a number of ulama over the past few weeks. I've been discussing with a number of doctors, and I've observed a number of conversations between doctors, ulama, other religious leaders as well, members of political parties, politicians, and people from the Department of Health, from the regional offices in it. And I must tell you that there is the questions that all the communities have is exactly the same. The concerns are exactly the same. But Shukr, we're seeing people come out to vaccine centers. The fact that we have a number of vaccine centers opening up in local communities, in places that people feel familiar with and they feel comfortable with, and they know that they can meet people that are there, that they know. Shukr, we're seeing our local communities specifically going out in their numbers and getting vaccinated.
Talk to us about the wonderful story of this, what I understand to be a 90-year-old doctor who comes every day and volunteers at the vaccination facility.
Alhamdulillah, Dr. Sirat has been absolutely phenomenal. Dr. Sirat's turning 90 within the next 2 weeks. He retired 10 years ago, and he's been volunteering every day for an hour. He promised us that he can only do an hour a day because he gets a little tired. But Alhamdulillah, he's been absolutely committed to his hour that he's committed to. And he comes out there and he thoroughly enjoys it. He thoroughly enjoys interacting with the community, interacting with some of the other volunteers. And his engagement and his advice to the other doctors has been. I sat and spoke to him today for a few minutes, just asking him about his life and about what he wants to do. But he's very committed on getting people vaccinated. And I asked him, what are we going to do for his birthday? And he told me he wants to inshallah vaccinate 90 people.
What's the response of people who come to be vaccinated and they find a 90-year-old doctor that's ready there to vaccinate them? Do they find it somewhat interesting?
Alhamdulillah, a doc for 90 years old is he's so alert. He is so conscious of worldly matters, of the community issues, and you firstly never say he's 90 years old, so you feel very comfortable getting jabbed by Dr. Sirat. But again, he's a real people's person. He's worked in a number of humanitarian projects over the past few years, traveled internationally, supported other organizations over the past few years, and this drive is something that he's really, really enjoying. And people are shocked when you tell them he's 90 years old. But again, people love hearing his stories, and he makes you feel comfortable when you do get jabbed. Today, he worked very hard to get to 10,000 jabs with us today. And he really, really pushed and said, no, we need to get to 10,000 as quick as possible.
Now, tell us about having this facility within the masjid environment. I would understand that many non-Muslims come as well. Does it then serve as a da'wah opportunity? Is there curiosity as to what happens within a masjid? Is there a good PR for the Muslim community when such a facility is run from within the precincts of a masjid?
Definitely, Banana. We've got people now that are visiting the masjid that have never been to a masjid property in their lives. We've got a lot of people coming, asking us specifically after they get jabbed, can they take a walk through the masjid? Can they walk into the masjid? But again, not just the masjid itself as a physical structure. Alhamdulillah, the community, the Muslim doctors, the Muslim volunteers have been real ambassadors for humanity, and ambassadors for the masjid, and ambassadors for Islam and for Muslims at large. We're seeing a lot of people leaving the site saying, so-and-so doctor helped me. What a wonderful person. And there's been a number of stories, man, that blew us away. People coming to us and saying they want more information on this, or what happens with this, or what do we believe. The fact that we close on a Friday alone, we have got a lot of people that come on the set and say, I was here yesterday, I heard you guys are praying. And then they want to go into the masjid and see the masjid. But there's a lot of interaction between the Muslim community and the non-Muslim community, something that we've never experienced before. And I think it's been our 13 days of open masjid. There's a lot of masjid programs that you have open days for the masjid. We've had 13 days of the masjid being open for people to get vaccinated, of course, but to interact with Muslims, to interact with our community, our leaders, our ulama, in an environment that's facilitated by the Department of Health and under the banner of the vaccination. But Alhamdulillah, it created an opportunity for us to meet new people, and we're definitely seeing the relationship with not just our Muslim community in the area getting stronger, but the relationship with our entire community getting stronger. Shukran.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the positives that has come out of all of this. I mean, every crisis presents its opportunities. I was speaking to a brother from Durban over the long weekend, and he was saying, that when the looting started, we all had to come out and we all had to make a collective effort. And for the first time, we met some of our neighbors, some of the people in our localities, because each one was living his own individual life behind the high walls of his and the well-secured homes within which people live. And now we were forced to get to know each other within the Muslim community itself, and then the broader locality. Muslim neighbors got to know non-Muslims, and it just brought to the fore a great community spirit. These crises that we've been dealing with in recent weeks and months.
You know, Malana, I've been talking to some of the volunteers on the burial side, and one of the things that someone asked me in recent weeks is, how do you guys deal with so much of sadness, so much of death? And my exact words to him was, Allah shukr, at the circumstances and the situation that we find ourselves in, we're seeing life. We're seeing more families. We've got an opportunity to be there for people at times where no one else can be there for them. And not because they haven't got a support structure around them, but because of COVID and social distancing and traveling restrictions and limited numbers at funerals, and uncertainty around COVID and how to deal with a COVID funeral, how to deal with COVID infections or visitors at home or doctors visiting you at home. And Allah shukr, we've been given an opportunity to see life, to create bonds and relationships with families in ways that we never ever thought would be possible. And some of those relationships, genuinely, when we sit there, we talk to those individuals, there's a bond and a relationship with those individuals that it's almost a spirit as if like you've traveled together or you've been on a umrah or pilgrimage or something together. I'm not making a comparison that it's equal to that in any way, but but there's almost that little bond that you have with a lot of the people that we've traveled with when we took them to the hospital, or some of the families that we met where we assisted them with funerals. And at that time, they had very limited people coming to the mayat because it was odd times of the morning, or because the rest of the family was infected with COVID, so they couldn't have family support around them. So shukr alhamdulillah, it's been an opportunity for us as individuals. And I don't think just for us as MASA or for us as the Houghton community or for us as the Joburg community, but throughout the country, it's been an opportunity for thousands of guys on the ground, volunteers, guys in the front lines, doctors, to experience community in a different way. And again, Ultima, there's a lot of the negatives that we hear and the issues that always tend to get more traction, but there's so many positive stories that have come out in recent weeks and months that some of us will hold on for the rest of our lives.
What's in the pipeline? In Gauteng in particular, we're moving now towards, hopefully, inshallah, a bit of a lull, and then we'll have to see when and if the fourth wave comes. Many say it's a matter of when, not if. Hopefully not as severe as the third wave, with more vaccinations and more people having antibodies, etc. But are you starting to plan a little bit now for what the next few months could look like in terms of your various initiatives and projects?
Maulana, home support will continue. We are trying to help those people that are affected most by COVID. So we will continue assisting the doctors in working through our doctors, working through our local programs that have been ongoing, our feeding programs. We will continue those programs. But for now, our concentration, of course, with our volunteers is to get as much people vaccinated as possible. We know that the over 18s will be opening up on the 1st of September, inshallah. We anticipate that it will open up a little earlier, and we're hoping that does open up earlier. We see very enthusiastic youngsters already making inquiries. How do they get registered? How do they get to vaccination sites, and what is the process to get vaccinated? So we're hoping that it does open up earlier, but I think that will take us at least a solid month and a half until we start seeing the numbers drop at vaccination centers. So our focus is on getting as much people vaccinated come 1st September and as quick as possible as well.
As a community going forward now, a lot of wonderful initiatives have come to the fore. We've seen the spirit, the spontaneity. We've seen people willing to sacrifice, dedication, long hours, no remuneration, no pay, just doing it for the welfare of the community and the society. In your opinion, what should we learn now and build on moving forward as a community beyond COVID, so that whatever good work was done is just not limited to the period of the crisis, but it kind of helps us to generate some momentum or to form some sort of a foundation so that we're better prepared, better equipped, better structured, and be better able to serve mankind going forward as a community?
I think the one thing that is that was highlighted is that we can't afford duplication. So over the past few months, there has been a lot of collaboration, organizations working together so that we could pull resources from different organizations. There's some organizations that have got a national footprint and logistically is much stronger. There's other organizations that might have more resources in certain fields. But I think the biggest lesson that we can take from this, from these past few months, is that collaboration is key. We need to work together with different organizations. We need to communicate better with organizations. And we need to start focusing on how we can use our resources as a community, not as individual organizations or individual communities or individual masjids, but how we can utilize our resources as a South African Muslim community, a South African community, not just maybe South Africa, also internationally, how we can rely on others, join hands, collaborate, so that we can assist more people and ultimately make a bigger impact, not just in our Muslim community, but in a global community. The need is there, Maulana. There's one thing for sure, that no one organization can solve the food crisis or can eliminate poverty until we don't get collaboration and we don't get communication between organizations at the macro level, networking and pulling resources. I don't think we are going to make any headway in interventions, no matter where or what it is.
As we close, Yaseen, let me put you a bit on the spot, right? After the rioting and the looting last month, there are many people who are disillusioned. There are many people who are wondering that is South Africa still the place to live? There are those who say, I don't mind starting again, rebuilding my business, starting from scratch, but I'm worried that a couple of years down the line, what if this happens again? There are people who are totally disillusioned with government's inability to defend and protect its citizens and their property and their wealth, to roll out programs effectively and speedily. It seems like the entire system has got a cancer of corruption that's eating away at it. Being on the ground and having seen the best of people and the worst of people, as a South African, what reassurance can you give to people out there about staying here and still fighting for the betterment of this country?
Malana, I think us as South Africans, we still got a lot of shukr to make. No matter what the circumstances are, alhamdulillah, we are able to practice our religion. Our darulums are known worldwide. We able to practice our deen. And I think personally, from my perspective, I don't think there are many countries in the world that can offer that to us. The question of the protests specifically and the threats that we saw, shukr, when I put my other hat on, the vision tactical hat, we were on the ground, we were experiencing, we know that a lot of it was politically instigated, and we pray that we never ever see another, or we never ever see violence and looting like that. People's lives have changed. People in remote areas have been affected, and they'll never ever be able to recover. But there's a lot that still needs to be done, and we need to look at opportunities. where we can continue to support people. It's very disheartening. I was on the streets of Joburg that first Sunday evening when Joburg was on fire, and the disheartening thing or the disappointing thing from my side specifically is I saw homeless people burning blankets that we had given out 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to that, and those blankets were being burned in front of us. In fact, some of the guys that were throwing things at us remembered our faces and knew who we were because we had handed out blankets there. But again, we have to focus, we have to realign ourselves on the fact that there is a definite need. And if we are not going to play our role as active South Africans and volunteers and make sure that we continue to support those that need so much, we will become bigger targets. And we remaining focused and looking at it that we need to continue doing what we're doing so that we don't become bigger targets for protest, for hatred, for anger, for poverty.
Jazakumullah for your time, and we make dua that Allah accepts the efforts that you and your team are involved in and continues to make it of benefit to the community and to the country.
Jazakallah, Mona, Jazakallah for your dua, Jazakallah for your continuous support. I want to also take the opportunity, Molana, to thank the different communities that have taken on the initiative to for the vaccine drives. We know that Sabri Chisti's drive was very successful in Lenasia this past weekend. We know that the vaccination centers in Lorium is starting up. And we want to appeal to volunteers to continue assisting with mobilizing local doctors to continue supporting the vaccination drives. I think we all have a part to play. And Jazakallah to you, Molana, to your team, to your community, and to everyone for assisting and volunteering and supporting the initiatives thus far.
Barakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalam.
It was Yaseen Theba from the Muslim Association of South Africa talking to us about the vaccination facility at the West Street Masjid in Houghton and the different on-the-ground initiatives. It's like I said, and I can't re-emphasize this enough. You see the worst of people and you see the best of people in the time of crisis. We've seen a lot of the bad stuff. I don't want to elaborate on it right now. Sometimes you just got to put a pause on talking too much about the negative things. But we don't amplify enough the good that's taking place. I mean, think about it. This is just one example here in Houghton, Gauteng, to be specific. Almost every community is doing something on different scales, in different ways, but they're doing. We always speak about the weaknesses in our community, and so we should. But we must also speak about the strength and the positives in the community. People who are willing to rally and come to the fore and put their lives on the line to secure the community at the time of threat to people's lives and to people's property. And besides that, I mean, the looting was a very kind of acute, if I can put it that way, a very kind of drastic moment. But it's weeks and weeks and weeks of home care, food initiatives, hamper campaigns, vaccination drives. Sometimes the long yards are the harder yards, right? To do something more drastic and more intense over a short period of time is sometimes quicker. It's sometimes easier, rather, and this requires more dedication, more sincerity, more commitment, more sacrifice. And to all those who are volunteering, and to all those who are sacrificing, and to all those who are doing a wonderful job of serving their communities, what can we say? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had said, "Khayrun nas anfa'uhum lin-nas." The best of people are those who are of the most benefit to others. Allah in the Quran describes Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as being a person who worried about others, Muslim and non-Muslim. The next person's problem, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made it his own problem. The next person's difficulty, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made it his own difficulty. So we should keep that in mind. Appreciate the efforts If we can't contribute financially, we should contribute with our time, with our expertise. We can't do that. Let's at least contribute with a good word. Give them moral support. Give them some acknowledgement and appreciation. If you can't do that, then at least make dua for them. And inshallah, you'll get a portion of the reward for the good work that they are doing. Ask Allah to bless them, to protect them, to enable them, to guide them, to grant them prosperity, to grant them success. And why not do all of it? Give a little bit of time, give a little bit of money, share a good word, and continue to make dua. Another thing that we touched on there in the last question with Yaseen was the issue of immigration. I touched on this in my Jummah talk last week, and I mentioned that, look, it's not for any one person to prescribe and to say that you should emigrate or you shouldn't. It's a personal choice at the end of the day, and there's no wrong or right, really, technically speaking. You can't say that a person is doing wrong if they decide to leave the country, nor can you say that the person is doing wrong if they decide to live in the country. It's not an issue of halal or haram or jaiz and not jaiz or permissible or impermissible. On the positive side, people will say, and this is argument that is to be made, that if you look at the Malay community, for example, you look at the Indian community, our forefathers had to make a sacrifice. They took a chance. They took a bit of a gamble. They came here. It wasn't easy, but eventually they made it work. And today we call South Africa home. We are as South African as anyone else because this country belongs to everyone who lives within it, right? And that's what's in the Freedom Charter. We should not fall for that, the race baiting that political opportunists do simply because they want to secure votes. And that's why they align their rhetoric in that particular way or in that particular fashion. We should abstain from that nonsense. What we should do is not be oblivious to issues, acknowledge issues where they exist. Racism is a problem within our communities as well. We need to deal with it, but we cannot deal with it in a populist way full of rhetoric and political point scoring. So yes, our own forefathers are a precedent, an example of people who then migrated and made it work. But the dynamics are not always the same. And I always give this example of a friend of mine who lives in Sydney, who's originally from South Africa, who spent probably 2 to 3 decades now in Australia. So South African by birth and now Australian in terms of residence. And a couple of years ago, he was in South Africa visiting family and friends, and he came home and we were having a meal and we chatted. And I asked him and I said, look, what's it like when you're meeting people? What do they tell you? What are they asking you? So he said, they all tell me, you're so fortunate, you live in Australia, you don't have to lock your doors at night, you don't have to worry about the car, you don't have to worry about being robbed, you don't have to worry about being killed, that kind of thing. And he said, I told all of them, no, that's true. I mean, in Australia, we have much more safety and much more security. But he said, look, that pertains to my wealth and that pertains to my physical life. But the biggest problem that Muslims face in South Africa is atheism amongst the youth because of the kind of communities that exist there. I'm not saying every youngster that goes there will become an atheist or that majority. I'm saying it's one of the biggest challenges, more of a challenge, and it's here. So he said, I wonder, am I really better off or are you better off? You go to bed at night worried that you mustn't be killed, so your physical life is taken, or you mustn't lose your property. But I go to bed at night worrying that what's going to be the condition of the iman of my children. They mustn't lose their faith. And that's a very big consideration, a very big consideration. I'm not saying there aren't other countries in the world where your faith is less vulnerable, or that every other country you're going to be more compromised from a faith perspective. No. But we know that the religious freedom that we have here is in many ways better than what even many Muslims have in Muslim majority countries. It's a big factor. In many ways, it should be the factor when it comes to these kind of decisions. Yes, some people are very solid in their own faith and they're very structured in their home environment, and they can take their family to any other country and they can preserve their identity, they can preserve their faith. That's why I say in the end, it's a personal decision, but it's a dynamic that you cannot ignore. Then there are other aspects, right? You go to Canada, there's the extreme winters. You go to Europe, there's the extreme gloomy weather. You go to some countries, there's greater Islamophobia. It's all about balancing. The reality is majority of people can't afford to migrate. It's not a cheap exercise. For those who can, yes, put your eggs in multiple baskets. That's the prudent thing to do. As much as we love South Africa, we legally and legitimately invest offshore, have a home somewhere else, if you can afford it. But if you can't, then that's a different matter. And also, I mean, for those who can't afford it, they still tell you that South Africa is home. Okay, maybe I'll have a flat in Dubai, or I'll get citizenship of another country, just in case everything I love but goes up in total flames, and I've got to run. I've got something with which to start a life there, or I go there and I am here. I kind of live between two countries. Okay, all right, understood. But if your entire history is here, your family is here, your friends are here, your social support structure is here, it's not all that easy to pick up and leave. And if we leave in too many numbers, not that I think that will happen. As I said, only few people can afford to leave. Unfortunately, they are the ones that own a significant amount of wealth, which they take out of the economy, which they take out of the communities. But that said, many can't, the majority can't afford, and even those who can afford, many don't want to leave because this is the only home that they know. They haven't been to India, they don't have friends in India, they don't want to relocate there, they don't want to relocate to any other country. This is home. I agree with Yaseen's sentiment that there's so much worth fighting for in South Africa. I'm not saying that things are going to come right overnight. It's not. We've got serious issues here. Safety and security, corruption, incompetence at government level, but then there are also many other positives. And I don't think that we've reached a point of absolute no return. We're coming fairly close. We can't ignore that, but I think if we all put our shoulders to the wheel and then we do whatever we need to do on multiple fronts in terms of our planning, our efforts, our strategizing, but then also looking for guidance and spiritual assistance from Allah by being better servants of Allah, we could get there, inshallah. It may take us our lifetime. It may be the requirement of our generation. Look, if our forebears came 100 years ago or 300 years ago to this country, they had to bear certain sacrifices to be able to bring us as a community to this point. Maybe this is our sacrifice now, and we need to do this more for the next generation than for ourselves. And let's be positive, right? The month of Muharram has started, and the month of Muharram signals a new beginning, a new Hijri year, 1443. Let's be positive, take a good omen that inshallah now, this coming year will be much better for us. We work towards it, but we take a good omen. At the same time, Muharram also reminds us that the struggle between truth and falsehood is an eternal one, but ultimately, truth always prevails. Pharaoh met his Moses. As strong and as powerful as he was, ultimately he was defeated, and we should take a lot of hope and a lot of courage from that. That's it for this week's program. Shukran for tuning in. Until next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.